on today's show. I've been making these posts, and sometimes I admit they're a little bit inflammatory, but I want people to start using their brains, because we live in a society of unprecedented non-brain usage, it seems like. And so, for example, in this video that I posted, I do look a little crazy. I mean, it's okay, but I'm on the fly. I don't have a makeup person, right? But I was thinking about how everybody says, on the one hand, they don't get a jury trial. And I'm sitting here and I go to the Sixth Amendment and it says first they said they're criminals. They should be deported. They're criminals. They should be in jail. They're criminals. They don't deserve rights. And then you go to the actual law, right? So they say you never have any arguments, you never have any debate, you're an idiot. Everything that statists do is gaslighting. And I guess it makes sense because we have politicians and presidents right now, and literally their entire MO is to gaslight people. Which ultimately comes down to saying people are crazy for using common sense, and you accuse them of all the craziness that you're actually doing. So they say, they're criminals, they're criminals. And I go to Amendment 6 of the Constitution, and that's what I talked about in my short today. No person shall be held, on all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy, the accused, not the citizen, because there's no citizen. There was no citizens when they drafted the Constitution. It was before citizens. The Constitution has no relationship to citizens other than in certain rules, like to be president, things like that. Okay? Shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury in the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed in the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him and have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Everything we just described there, that is the Sixth Amendment, the highest law of the land that supersedes all state and federal laws that come after it, is completely being ignored in all immigration processes now. And people say, they don't get due process, they're criminals. That's literally the point of the Sixth Amendment. If someone's accused of being a criminal, which of course it's not a real crime, that's why they don't get due process, because if you actually started putting people up for juries, first of all, their system of fascism would break down because they couldn't do enough trials. But second of all, people would stop convicting because they would realize that these people who are being witch hunted are not actually the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst are the ones sitting on the bench and running in the elections and sitting in the Oval Office. The people that are actually on trial are fathers and mothers and families and people who have worked all their lives and contributed to society all their lives. So if you think about this, it's so simple. And so what I get constantly, let's actually look at like the comments, for example, on this video. There's a few here. There's not a ton. Let's see if I can get the comments up. And just look at a few. Obviously, there's some people that get it, right? But this guy has so much energy, I'm exhausted by just listening. You can watch this video, I'll link it in the comments if you guys missed it. This is a manic serotonin dopamine imbalance. You notice what they do when they're gaslighting. They use big words and they try and act really intelligent. Ironically, I actually get this even on my photography channel when I'm teaching like concepts of how photography works, because I'm an expert in photography. I'm a master of photography. And it doesn't mean I'm not learning. One thing I learned from my mentor many years ago is that you never stop learning, even from people less experienced. But I'll get people that's internet mindset of ignorance, where you just spew out nonsense that uses big words and sounds intelligent and talks in circles, and then you say other people are idiots. And you notice that while I do sometimes call people idiots, I don't actually debate that way. I'm always presenting facts, and no one wants to respond to facts. And so what I see constantly, hey, stupid, they are here illegally. They have no rights. They are not born in the USA. The Constitution does not apply to them. So sick of the retarded shit you spew. Big shock. Military and a blue line flag, right? The state worshipers. Now, I want you to think about this. People are repeating this in mass. Millions of people are repeating that concept right there. They don't have rights. They're not citizens. Nowhere in the Constitution is that ever implied. Nowhere in even any case law, which isn't actually law, nowhere in any sense of human rights is that implied. Whether someone is a citizen has absolutely no relation on their rights, because The Bill of Rights is based on human rights. It doesn't grant rights. Okay? So now, and I could show so many of these kind of comments that are just constantly gaslighting all the time. Remind me where you studied law and where you passed the bar. Remind me where you studied law, because you're not even talking about the law. This is the problem. Like, lots of the founding fathers that helped to write the highest laws of our land and sign it didn't go to law school. Understanding law has no relation. Being a lawyer has no relation to whether you went to law school. Most of the attorneys I know that were on the bar, they don't represent the law at all. They might know laws, but usually they know the BS and how to manipulate it. And laws actually mean very little, these simple fundamental things. And yes, I recognize that sometimes it's because they know that those laws aren't relevant in court and they have to do what they can. I get that. But that's not law. So attorneys that are members of the bar, members of the club, they deal with statutes and talking in circles. But laws are actually very simple. And so what I see all the time, all day long, is these comments where we have constant gaslighting. So, for example, the other night I said, if you support ICE, you would have turned in Anne Frank, you would have yelled to Pilate, crucify him, and you would have stacked the wood under Joan of Arc. Now, instead of taking the meaning, right? And yes, you could say, oh, you're being inflammatory. You bet. With these Gestapo statist redcoats, I'm not going to play games anymore. People are being destroyed. They're taking people away. This is what we learned about when we studied history as kids, and we said, how could the Germans have let that happen? That's where we've come to full circle again today. People are dying in these concentration camps that didn't commit crimes, because no, immigration is not a crime, even if you don't have papers. The very idea, and this was, remember, this concept that you need permission from government and papers to live and work and eat and survive and travel. Fascist regimes have tried to do this for a long time. But in United States culture and in any sort of a free republic-minded culture, this concept was not a real concept until recently. It's certain the founding fathers were very clear. The Declaration lists immigration restriction as one of the reasons we actually fought the American Revolution. And so, and yeah, you can go read it. People say, oh, you're an idiot. And this is the problem that I see constantly. And you guys can see it if you follow my Facebook, my personal page, my Gavin Sign for Liberty page, the comments on here, you can always see this same thing where some people get it. And some people, do you know who hates the United States like you? The Nazis and the commies, right? I support American women not getting raped, right? Everything, you weren't alive then. You were stupid. I got one. You would have killed Einstein for being a Jew. Just random incoherent thoughts. Definitely incoherent and definitely random, because while I don't support the terrorism that the current Israeli regime has committed, that has no relation to whether I'm against somebody that's Jewish. See, everything is reversed and twisted all day, every day. In fact, you can look at some of these. I mean, if you look at some of these comments that we get all the time. Let me clear out some of the junk here. I mean, it's not your Constitution anymore. This is their debate, guys. This is what I want you to understand. This is what I get all day, and I'm making these thoughtful posts and videos and trying to articulate. Stay in Mexico and mind your own business, all right? The groomer speaks again. This is gaslighting at its finest. The people currently in power, and I'm not saying that the previous administration wasn't involved either, but these are people that are literally on the pedo list. These people are rabidly supporting and then turning around and calling other people pedos and groomers. Like, the rationale of this is honestly beyond sensibility. Once again, You have proven conclusively that you are a completely deranged lunatic who is so out of touch with reality that you believe in your own bizarre lies and delusions. You're a sick man and you really need to get professional help. That's this lovely comment from Tracy. I get this all day, every day, every time I actually sit down and reason something out. And this is my question and kind of the topic of this video, because I could go through and show all kinds of these. You ran to Mexico. You're a coward. I think you might be low on testosterone. You're so effing retarded. These are the debates. See, when I was young, I remember if you had an opinion on something, you wrote a letter to the editor, and providing it was reasonably well crafted and not incoherent stupidity, it would get published in the paper relatively freely. And so we could have a discourse that way in public before social media. Somehow we've gotten to this point where these people that claim to be mature, elders, Christians, wise, veterans, whatever, the stuff coming out of their mouth, here I am still writing letters to the editor. It's just you guys are the editor. Here I am researching and reading constitutions. That article, I realized a long time ago that the immigration restriction was BS. But this article that I link all the time, that's all my notes and all the reasons why the founding fathers were against immigration restrictions, why they made it clear that they were not permissible, and also all the things around it in the Constitution, human rights, and just the basic moral law of life, liberty, and property. It's all in this article. But I didn't just throw it together. I didn't just let AI write it all. And I certainly didn't just say, you guys are all idiots because you don't believe like I do. And I realize the left and the right does this. This is where we're at. Intelligence and thoughtfulness is now called ignorance and stupidity. And raging, foaming at the mouth, hate, and stupidity is now called intelligence. And that's ridiculous. And this article here, I always leave this, right? Because I'm not going to go repeat. This literally is more than 5 years of research, all in one place. You can go find every quote, every reference, every argument that says the government has power to control who immigrates and who doesn't and who works and who doesn't, and immigration and papers and all that are needed. Every argument is debunked in this argument, in this paper, right? Now you can go there and you can disagree, but if your rebuttal to that is you're an idiot, then you lost. Everybody's always saying, Gavin, you lost the argument, but they can't even make a response to me. And this is what I'm getting at. What has happened to our society that this is the case? And I make comments like that short video I did today where I'm sharing my thoughts, and the kind of comments on say things like, building on a life of crime you committed doesn't make you noble or absolve you of anything just because you committed a crime long ago. Justice delayed isn't justice. Referring to someone who came to the U.S. without papers 40 years ago and has been working and raising a family and contributing to society all their life. Do you realize how psychotic that is? That is mentally ill. That's not a life of crime you committed. When you go back to the 80s and 90s, no one cared, including the conservative Christian right, that they didn't have papers, because we all knew that was ridiculous. It's actually been, I recognize that some of these rules have existed and started slowly after the Civil War. Before that, absolutely no immigration restrictions of any kind existed. Borders were always open in the U.S. That was the demand of the Constitution. That was the intent of the Founding Fathers. Now, after the Civil War, that slowly changed, but it mostly didn't get heavy until the drug war in the 70s and 80s. And ultimately, even then, compared to now, it was nothing. It didn't really ramp up until after 9/11, when they tried to make everyone a terrorist that wasn't like us. It's gaslighting. They're always gaslighting. And so what's actually happening? What are immigration restrictions? Immigration restrictions are when the biggest criminals and human traffickers in your nation get together to convince you that they will stop crime and human trafficking. And the only price you have to pay is to give up some essential liberties for security. The Founding Fathers also talked about that those who give up liberty for security deserve neither, and they won't have them either. And that's what we have today. We have war, we have lies, everyone's a terrorist, everyone's invading your family. The government is going out and creating the crime and insecurity and making you afraid and angry. They use war to do the same thing. War is a drug. It exists to save you from problems created by the very people declaring the war so that they can steal from your country in many ways, but one of the big ones being by paying their corporate friends 20, 50, 100x the normal rate for basic items like a Band-Aid or a shell or something like that, and they get a kickback, all while causing fear and rage in you, and then they offer you the solution: give up your freedom for more security. It's this endless cycle that we're in that's almost like a time loop. And people are so ignorant because no one will even have a reasoned conversation. You have to understand that if you can't sit down and defend your position with some kind of facts, and facts are not what your favorite talk show host or the news or the latest nationalist propaganda. Facts are history. Facts have to coincide with what law is: life, liberty, and property. Facts have to coincide with the way things work. These so-called right-wing conservative Christians are no more rational than someone saying a cow is a pig or black is white, or a man who declares himself a woman is suddenly changed genders. That's not how it works. There's many magical mysteries in the universe, but there's certain things in the world we live in that have to be based on fact. And you can't just call everyone an idiot and then say you won the argument. And I don't know when these people got to this point where we're such raging, rabid, stupid bitches that we just repeat what they say. Executive orders are not laws. Legislation are not laws unless they comply with the higher laws, the fundamentals of law, oftentimes in a civil sense, usually enforced through a constitution. The Constitution forbids everything they're doing. And so they say, oh, well, no, they're criminals. They're criminals. You built a life of crime. No, they're not criminals. When they came, a lot of these people that are being deported, when they came, no one even cared. We all laughed at these rules. And suddenly now they're terrorists after they've been paying taxes and contributing. It's BS. Give them a jury trial. And this is what it comes down to. This was my case in point, and I'll close this kind of topic that I mentioned in the short video. If they're criminals, give them a jury trial. You insist they're criminals, give them a jury. Oh no, well no, it's a civil matter, right? They don't get a jury trial, they just get sent out. This isn't a traffic ticket. They're not being fined $100. They're having everything they have taken. Their families are being taken away. They're being sent to concentration camps or prison camps, if you prefer. They're losing their jobs, their homes, their possessions, their cars. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure, not citizens, people, in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. I'm literally reading the law and people are saying I'm a psychotic, hopped up, crazy person. They're the crazy ones. Truth is treason in an empire of lies, and we live in an empire of lies. So you have to decide, because if there's no warrant, if there's no probable cause, well, they can't be detained, searched anyhow. They certainly can't have their things and their entire life and everything that they've worked for stolen from them, which is what's happening right now. And so therefore, if you do have a warrant, because the Constitution doesn't give the government the authority over this, so if there is a warrant, oh, you don't have papers, you didn't follow our legislation, where's the warrant and where's the jury trial? Because that's demanded in the sixth. Has anyone arguing with me ever actually sat down and spent 20 minutes just reading the Bill of Rights and the rest of the Constitution? Has anyone actually stopped and used a brain cell in 2025 that's supporting this psychotic, Gestapo-like fascism? Because I have. And I've been doing it for years, and I've been trying to convince you guys of it for years. Please, if you're falling for this crap, just stop and get off the news and get off the talk shows and go read the basics of how Christ tells us to treat people, of what the Constitution says. That's the law. I'm getting called mentally ill for quite literally reading the law. And that's the country we live in. And I just want to know, at what point did that happen?